Welcome to this week's Friday 5 podcast, where I review 5 podcasts from the week before, from this week. And I'm going to do things a little differently this time. The last few, I've just tried to summarize like an hour, 2-hour podcast in like less than 2 minutes. And I'm just going to kind of do more of a free form thing. One, because doing it the other way was not a lot of fun. I wasn't having a lot of fun with it, and I'm doing this to have fun. I'm doing this to share this information, but have fun with it, and hopefully inspire you to listen to maybe some new podcasts or just explore some new ideas. And that's really the only reason that I'm doing it. So I want to have more fun with it, and speaking in more free form and allowing conversations to, or allowing my speech to just come and go and have some ums and some ahs and whatever, and just kind of feel through the topic is way more in my wheelhouse and way more enjoyable for me, to be honest. So this week we're going to take a little different spin on it, and this week what we're going to do is I'm going to just focus on one topic. And what kind of started all of this is I was on Instagram, and one of the accounts that I just started following, called metacontent.co, had some posts that I was going through. And the concept for metacontent.co is to provide, meaningful, intentional content for you to review, read, retain, and it's not tapping into that, instant gratification, quick hit, addictive type of content. There's posts that have a nice little summary, and then usually a link to an article that is, longer than most articles than we usually read these days. And one of those was to an article about Tristan Harris, who was a former Googler who started a company called Time Well Spent, and then he pivoted to calling it the Center for Humane Technology. And this article is about how he's coined the term of we are downgrading as humans by our overuse and overconsumption of technology. So personally, I've been averse to social media and technology for a long time. And I just recently, around the start of this past year, January 2020, end of December, all right, you know what? If you can't beat them, join them. I went on a yoga retreat, and on that yoga retreat, I kind of thought that everyone would just have their phones off, and we'd all be meditating, and it'd be like my dream of this like yogi mindfulness situation, and it wasn't. And at first I was disappointed, and then I realized that this is just the way it is. This is the way life is, and this is what people do. So I decided that I wanted to use social media as a tool. And I got that mostly from one of my podcast mentors that I listen to all the time, Aubrey. He said it's just like any tool. It's like a hammer. It's neutral. It just depends how you use it. You can use a hammer to take the nail out, or you can use the hammer to pound it in. So it's a neutral tool. And at the time, I wanted to believe that. And what I've learned from the research that I did this week is it's not neutral. It's not a neutral tool. Social media and the smartphones in general, are not neutral. We're fighting a losing battle as humans because there's a thing called artificial intelligence that is way smarter than us, times a million, that keeps us checking our phones. The average American checks their phone over 150 times a day. But hopefully what I'm going to do is give you some tools to help you stop checking your phone 150 times a day, and then maybe give you some just updates on what else is happening in the world around this topic. All right, so Tristan Harris has this, he started Time Well Spent. He left Google and said, look, this is crazy. What we're doing is crazy. We're stealing people. We're purposely trying to steal people's time away from their family and their friends and put it on these devices so that we can get more of their information, so we can keep them on the devices longer and longer and longer. So he was a student of the Persuasive Technology department at Stanford. And he suggests that maybe there could be some sort of Hippocratic oath. The problem is the system is gamed to take our attention, which is what he calls the attention economy. So the system is designed to take as much attention as possible on the screens. Boom. Be on the screen. Stay on the screen, and so that these companies can take as much information about you as possible while you're on the screen. So I've been aware of the fact that this is a thing for a long time, and that's why I was pretty averse to it. I used to listen to the Minimalist podcast, and I was in tech for 10 years, and I understood that data can be mined down to the finest level, and at that finest level, you can take the information and do whatever you want with it. I sat in on security audits and disaster recovery, and just understanding that there are infinite possibilities that we can do with data. And our feeds, the things that are coming through for us are all very curated based on what we've done and all of our interactions and all the actions, every single thing that you've done. Go on Facebook and look at your activity, and it says everything that you've done. It's tracking all of that, and based on all of that activity, it's giving you exactly what you want because it knows what you want, and it's also telling you what you want. So it's pretty complex, and it's a little bit alarming. I'm not going to lie. This past week, going through all this, all these podcasts. So we've got Making Sense with Sam Harris. Tristan Harris is the guest. He was a former Googler. He started Time Well Spent and now the Center for Humane Technology. This is an issue. This is something that's not going away. One other thing he talks about is the attention economy is like a city. And at first, and the city is being run by Google, Apple, and Facebook. And at first, that city was just kind of doing its thing and it's fine. But now the city is dysfunctional, and we need to figure out what makes a city great and what can we do to make a city great. And one of the things that he talks about is having zones and saying a lot of people are already reaching for their phone as soon as they get out of bed. But we know that that's probably not good, especially if we're being attracted to outrage culture and negative press and things that are going to get us in a negative state of mind. Well, maybe if we could have some sort of Hippocratic oath, some sort of understanding of during these zones, this is the content we push. The problem is the system isn't gamed for that. The system is game for outrage culture. The system is game because that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easiest thing to click on. That's why there is a term called clickbait, because it's easy to click on, and it's easy. It's the thing that's most impulsive to click on. So, Tristan Harris doing great things with that. I think, Center for Humane Technology, if you want to check it out, I will have links to that in there. The next one is Digital Mindfulness. Is the name of the podcast. The title is Mental Health for All. The guest was Nick Tong. He is the co-founder of an app called Unmind. He's an English guy, and I think the other founder is a clinical psychologist. I believe Nick had a background in tech. The Unmind app is based on 4 pillars: cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, mindfulness, and neuroscience. So hard to argue with those. They felt like just, for example, Headspace and Calm is really based just on mindfulness. And these other ones are, they felt like it was more complex than that. And so Unmind is, again, an app that helps you deal with, the fact that you're up against artificial intelligence that's trying to get you to be impulsive and reach for your phone and be on your phone as much as possible, because that's what these tech companies need to continue to run the world. And so they have those 4 pillars, again, cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, mindfulness, and neuroscience. So pretty cool stuff. And they also it's more preventative than reactive, this particular one, preventative rather than reactive. And so they do assessments based on 6 key areas to measure. And those 6 key areas are calmness, happiness, coping, sleep, health, and energy. And then based on your results from that, you can, it'll feed you things that you can do to improve any one of those 6 areas. From what I gathered, this is used more with companies than individuals, and those companies would sign on basically maybe through their healthcare plan, so maybe even drilling down a further level, like through the healthcare provider to the company, they would say, here's an offering or an add-on that you can put to your healthcare. Basically that with the understanding that overall wellness is best for productivity and overall productivity for your employees. The cool thing about the way that this works with companies is that it does not, the company would subscribe to it, so to speak, but they would not have access to individual data. They may have access to at a high level where it says, 15 people in the company are feeling less than optimal energy, but they won't know that 5 of those people are in the accounting department and 3 of them are, male and 2 of them are female. Like they don't know that, and they can't get names. And so although it's an agreement with the company to work with Unmind, the individual is the one that would be interacting, one-to-one with the app and then with any of the help or human contact that's available through the app. So I thought that was pretty cool. There's a privacy impact assessment done with each company and each case. So definitely a cool little thing there. The next one was a really, really great podcast. And honestly, I probably should have led with this one. But here's the deal. If you're going to listen to any of these, listen to This Is Your Life in Silicon Valley. This one was May 23rd, 2019. It's 40 minutes long. It's with Tim Kendall. Frankly, he is just more engaging and interesting to talk to and talk about. And so he gives some great analogies about what's happening in the world. The first one that I really like is, in trying to, so he's the founder of an app called Moment, which is similar to, Time Well Spent. It's similar to Unmind, and his app actually has some coaching and some other layers to it that I just feel are a little bit better. And so if you don't know, like Apple has screen time and Google phones have digital awareness or digital mindfulness, and we have I'm a Google guy. We have focus mode. So, but what he basically says is like Apple and Google are aware of this, but what they're doing is basically, it would be like the equivalent of handing a scale to an obese person who has no concept of nutrition or fitness and saying, good luck. So yeah, I get data that says I've been on the phone for X number of minutes, hours, or whatever, hours, let's be real, hours, but I have no tools. I have no way to really like, okay, well, how do I stop doing this? Because again, remember, we are going against artificial intelligence that is 1 million times smarter than all of us, that's saying, go back to that. Go click on it again. Pick up your phone again. Check your Instagram feed. Check your Facebook feed. Check TikTok. Check Snapchat. And they said Snapchat is one of the most manipulative of all the apps. I'm not a big Snapchat person because I'm 40, but anyway. So I liked that analogy. He was also, so he was at Facebook. He was one of the first product managers at Facebook when they only had 100 people in the company. So he's seen it just completely blow up. And at the time he said, it was really interesting because he said at times they were afraid of MySpace because MySpace was bigger than Facebook at the time. So just kind of a nice little, sidebar anecdote. But he was also the president at Pinterest. And they talked a little bit about why does Pinterest not get any negative press and less scrutiny? Because it's not really a social network. It's more of a utility tool of how you would like to live your life, and it's more like a Google search. So it's not like preying on insecurities like social networks do. They are designed to keep you clicking and posting and scrolling and whatever, because it's ultimately like getting into the core of your being about who you are, because it's curated to figure out who you are. So really interesting. So if the lesser of two evils in terms of like Facebook or Pinterest, he said absolutely Pinterest is a way better product to for the human experience. So him and Tristan Harris are both in the same camp, and they're both fighting the same fight, the good fight. And what's really interesting about that is the fact that both of them one was at Facebook, one was at Google, and they both left realizing, one, that they were using their own phones too much, and two, that what we're doing to humans through the phones is really, really bad. The other analogy that he used that I liked, again, it was more like, it said it's just very similar to food. In the short term, it's really easy to eat junk food. It's really easy to, just grab a bag of Doritos, and it's really hard to stop once you start. And in the medium and long term, you see a physical feedback, immediate like visual feedback from that if you continue to, exhibit that habit. You're going to put on weight. Your body is going to react to it. Your complexion will change. All the things, right? So that's an immediate feedback when you look in the mirror. Whereas, what we don't realize with our addiction to technology and this attention economy, which Tristan Harris calls it attention economy, and Tim Kendall calls it an addiction economy. With our addiction economy, it's like food. It parallels food. So what we don't know about technology and how our overuse is impacting us is, like, in the short term, it's way easier to just pick it up, just like the bag of chips. But we don't really realize, and there's probably not a physical manifestation, at least a direct correlation. Like, we know when we're putting bad things in our gullet, and we know we're swallowing, we're eating that ice cream, we're eating those Doritos, and it's probably not going to look good on the other side. But we don't really make that connection naturally to the screen and our use of the screen. So, he said that that's just another analogy that we can use to, kind of figure out, like, that this is bad. He also talked about the fact that it's a little bit like whack-a-mole. Like, if you even take away social media, and I've experienced this because I've taken away social media recently by using focus mode from the Android operating service. And then I just found myself like looking up campers and, just spending still on my phone. It's better for me personally to be off of social media at a certain time per day, or at least a good part of the day, because otherwise, there's a direct correlation between people's overuse of social media and depression and anxiety. And I can tell you that I have personally felt that. The more I'm on it, the less I feel good about myself and others, to be frank. So anyway, there is causal links, again, to anxiety and depression. There's causal links to cortisol levels, stress levels. And 2/3 of adults think they have a problem. 2/3, 66%, let me know if that's you, think they have a problem with their phone usage, and only 1/4 of those 2/3 are actually trying to do something about it. So that's another interesting stat. So again, he calls it the addiction economy. Again, out of all of these, listen to that one. Listen to this one. Again, he's just a great communicator. He's very engaging, and I think with his analogies and the way that he portrays, it's not surprising to me either that his app seems to be the most comprehensive in really trying to solve the problem. Again, not just give somebody the scale, but there's coaching, there's programming around your use in different areas around sleep and energy, and there's like a phone boot camp program, which I need to try. I downloaded Moment, and I'm going to start using it, but I think this one is the one that you really want to listen to. So last two things. So one is a little bit more alarming, and I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk a little bit more about solutions. The first one is, so Joe Rogan had Elon Musk on last week, and it's episode 1470. I'll give you the link to it. And I'm just going to talk about a portion of that interview, and that portion was his company called Neuralink. And so I'll tell you, this really kind of got to me based on the fact that I'm studying or researching this topic, and this podcast was on, and a friend told me to check it out, and I did, and wow. Neuralink is going to be, basically an implant in the brain, and the first use of it will be for people with major disabilities. So, complete eyesight loss, so blind people, deaf people. I don't know if it's complete, if you have complete hearing loss or if you're completely blind, and then also those who are paralyzed. So the use of it will be first to help people, which is obviously a noble cause, but the progression of that is to then essentially create superhumans. And what he says is that eventually we'll get to the point where we won't even communicate via speech. So there will be no podcasts, there will be no videos like this. And it makes me think of like, I wouldn't even be yelling to my kids out on the field. And so I took a bit of a leap there, but basically what this implant does is it goes into the brain. It goes to the depth of your skull, so like to the brain, like right to the brain part, the surface of the brain. It has electrodes that go out to the different centers of the brain that need fixing, and it's got Bluetooth, and basically, so your computer is about 100 megabits per second at most when we're interacting with a computer and trying to get it to do something. When we can transmit data, humans to computers can transmit data is about 100 megabits per second max. That means like when we're typing or when we're trying to manipulate a screen, that's our interaction with the technology, about 100 megabits per second max if you're fast. This particular, so this would put it at 1 million times faster than that. So we're looking at 100 terabytes per second. So what he said is that it's inevitable. It's going to happen. We are essentially already cyborgs in a sense because we're so connected to the technology, and that we are going to eventually be connected with a chip. So for those of you who are Black Mirror fans, they are predicting our future, and it's going to happen. Again, this is Elon Musk, the CEO, founder of Tesla. Super genius. I don't doubt him. I think it's going to happen. Joe Rogan asked for some timelines, and he said, how far out are we? He said probably about a year to start helping people with disabilities, and probably 5 to 10 years, aggressive timeline, 5 to 10 years until people no longer need to speak to each other. I think maybe it's just because it's Corona time and this quarantine and all these unknowns about our future that this hit me really hard. I'm a coach, and I think it would be great if I could just telepathically tell my attackmen to, fake high, shoot low, as they're approaching a 1v0 or a 1v1 on a goalie, because they forget that one a lot. But there's something really unsettling about that to me, but hopefully it's done consciously, and hopefully it's somewhere in the middle for at least a while. But it's a good one to listen to again, and just if you're interested in that kind of stuff, and just to think about like what is possible in this world that we're living in, especially with so many questions going forward. So the last thing that I want to talk about is it's actually not a podcast. It's the last chapter of Own the Day, Own Your Life by Aubrey Marcus, which is an audio, which is a book, and I listened to it on an audio version and on Audible. And this chapter is called Turn Off, Tune In. So it's about our nightly routines, especially around technology. And what they're saying is, what he says is like, we got to turn it off. We've got to turn off the phones. That this phone is like the best designed Pez dispenser ever. For those of you that had a Pez dispenser, just those sugar pellets that we used to ingest. So you got dopamine that's just going constantly, which is obviously like a pleasure hormone. And also he talked about the fact that like self-disclosure posting, so even me doing this right now, the pleasure and stress, like the pleasure from that and also the stress from it, like this, there's this dichotomy of the release of that information where I'm like essentially kind of like getting off on the fact that I'm putting myself out there and that somebody's gonna be watching me, and then there's also the stress of people judging me. And that's kind of my whole experience with social media as a whole, is there's always this kind of negative and positive tug of war. So first basically said is turn off. My suggestion would be start small, so turn off the apps. There's an app called Inbox. So to control this, there's an app called Inbox Pause from Boomerang. I use focus mode. I set it at certain times from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. I'm thinking it should be really more 8 p.m. to 9 a.m., but whatever. I'm really disciplined in the morning. I don't look at it. I don't look at it at all until I get in, I've done my morning routine, but at night it's a little tougher to let go of, and it's just because we're tired and whatever. But so I think, Apple has screen time, and they have similar parameters that you can use. And then, so his 4 pillars of kind of turning off and tuning in. Turn it off in some way. If it's not completely off, start small by disabling certain apps. Okay, so turn off. Write a journal, and his suggestion is to write your mission statement about life, which should be really simple, to help people. Mine is to positively impact as many lives as possible. That's it. That's my, and that's why I'm here. So write that, and then write three objectives for the next day. And then those 2 things should be aligned. Your mission and those 3 objectives, like, they should be aligned, right? And then enjoy connection. So with the people, with your pets, somehow outside of the screen. So whether you're petting your dog, I live alone, I have 2 dogs, and it's a great time for me to connect and pet the dogs and just, really love on them, or if with your significant other, your kids, whatever. Connect with humans, connect with living beings as much as possible, and really use that as a way to wind down. And then the last is take care of the body, brush your teeth, stretch, roll out your muscles, do some foam rolling, things like that, and really just kind of wind down in that way. So those are his 4 pillars. Let the cortisol and dopamine drop out. Release it, get it away, get it out of your body, because again, the phone is just a constant incubator for those two hormones. So they're going to constantly go off. If you check your email and it's something stressful, or you see something from an ex or whatever in social media, that's stressful. That's going to hit that cortisol. If you got a new friend request, follower, blah blah blah, that's going to hit that dopamine, and both of those are not ideal for setting you up for a good night's rest. So hopefully this was helpful for you. Those are the 5 things. Oh yeah, no, I got them all. Yeah, hopefully this was helpful for you. Those are the 5 podcasts. This one again was just a chapter in an audio book, but nonetheless, the topic of our overuse of technology is something that's not going away. So I encourage you to look up Unmind. I encourage you to look up the Center for Humane Technology. Download the Moment app, and at the very least, make sure that you're paying attention to screen time and focus mode if you're a Googler or Apple guy or whatever. But understand that that's just like basically handing someone a scale. So you need to bring some knowledge to the table there. And then, if you want to get, a little bit freaked out, go check out the information on Neuralink in the Joe Rogan podcast with Elon Musk. This has been another Friday 5. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I love you, and bye-bye.